Hello everybody, my name is David. Thank you for watching CNXG. Today's another C-PTSD video, and I've been doing these quite often lately, and I have a playlist where I put them all in. So if you guys like these, you guys are interested, you want to see more, trying to find them, go to the playlist. Healing C-PTSD, okay? Today's video is about memory. Huge subject, obviously, and I'm not going to cover it all. This is something about memory that I wanted to discuss. I found some work by a Dr. Jelena Radulovic, and she's Dunbar Professor in Bipolar Disease at Northwestern University at the Feinberg School of Medicine. I thought she did some interesting study here, and I wanted to talk about it because memory is a huge part of C-PTSD. I have clients that can't remember anything before the age of 8. Nothing. Nothing at all. I mean, I have memories of 3, of 4. You know, and I'm not just talking about how far back you can go, because this is also a problem where our memories are kind of like patchwork, where we remember this and I remember that, and we know this happened and I can tell you about this, but there's like really nothing in between, and it's kind of like we can't look back at our own past and see the story, see the narrative. Really difficult for us to do. She did an interesting study on memory. Let me tell you about it. I always talk about the connections our childhood has to these traumatic experiences we're having as an adult. Radulovic says that our brain operates on different waves and compartmentalizes memories according to the wave our brains are on at the time. Much like a AM/FM radio, our brains have different waves that it's on. Okay? So I talk a lot about attachment trauma. And I think what she did kind of applies to this. You know, I always say the first attachment you have is the biggest. Okay? It's the most important. And, you know, I want to talk about the attachment we have in our adult life. So maybe the biggest, the first or biggest attachment we have as adults. Writer Lawrence Langer says, memory never stops. It cannot be silenced. Memory continues even if we don't talk about it, so we might as well talk about it. Many people cannot remember childhood because of trauma. We have coping mechanisms, and I talk about one of them is dissociation. I've talked about this in different videos of mine. Dissociation is kind of stepping out of a traumatic situation, something that you can't handle for whatever reason. Usually it's bad trauma that we can't handle. We have different ways of dealing with this when, you know, as children, our parents don't do this for us. They leave us in, you know, in states, hyperarousal states that we can't handle, that are too much for us. So we have a coping mechanism, which is dissociating. And that's escaping. That's escaping inside our mind somewhere and feeling safe, okay? But the problem with this, now that's okay. Dissociating is okay. And people that do it, it doesn't mean that you're crazy or anything like that. It's a very safe coping mechanism that keeps us safe, so it's a good thing. But we don't want to do it all the time. There's problems, especially in childhood. So many missed opportunities, missed interactions with our parents, and missed lessons learned. One of them is never learning how to keep ourselves safe. If we feel danger and we dissociate from it, we may feel safe and we may not even remember that traumatic incident, but it still happens, and we're not removing ourselves from that danger. And by dissociating, we never learn how. We never learn how. Very important. Women that have been molested as children are way more likely to be raped as an adult, because they experienced that, they dissociated, they didn't learn how to deal with that danger. They didn't learn how to protect themselves. Okay? And so they never learned. And so often this occurs again in adulthood, and they don't know how to protect themselves. They may just dissociate and get raped. Sad. Children are malleable like clay. You shape them and form them, you know, into what you want to be, to become. We help them be the person they are. Trauma makes our memories disorganized. So our experiences are stored, but we escaped them, and we're on different waves. So, you know, we're on this certain wave, when we're being traumatized, and our brain stores these memories during that wave we're on. Okay? So between escaping, dissociating, and storing our traumatic feelings on a specific wave means we can't remember. So often, some people cope, or some people go through their life after childhood trauma, and we don't really think that we're affected by it. Everything seems to be okay. We're going through life. You know, we may finish school. We start a family. Some people cope to such trauma by multiple personalities. Some of this trauma, and that's where multiple personalities comes from. And this is ways they won't remember. They won't even have to deal with it. Okay? But going through life with symptoms such as poor sense of self, hypervigilant, overreacting, anxious, depression, and not know why. Okay? That's very common with people with C-PTSD. They don't know why. And I you know, here you come to me and I tell you, well, let's talk about your childhood, and it's just what? It's fine. Nothing happened. You know? And it's like, no, it did. If you're doing this now, that happened then. And we always find it later, but they just don't. They either don't remember, they don't think it's a problem, they don't think it's bad, they don't think, you know, it's normal. This is how CPT was developed, okay? By subsets of disorders. So patients had, you know, anxiety disorders, eating disorders, dissociative disorders, addictions. And then we realized, doctors realized that, you know, all these subsets of disorders is C-PTSD, okay? To make one disorder. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder, okay? So Dr. Radulovich did a study on mice, and I thought this was pretty cool. So here's the study, and I'll try and explain it to you as easy as possible. Dr. Radulovich took mice and gave them a mind-altering drug and studied them, studied their behavior, this and that. Then he took these mice and he put them in a box. While they're in that box on that drug, he gave them a mild electric shock. Boom. Okay? Waited a couple days, waited till the drug wore off. He took those mice again, no drugs, set them in the box. Totally acting normal behavior. Walking around, running around, whatever. Then he takes those mice and puts them back on that drug. Okay? Now he already knows how they acted on the drug. But in the box on the drug, they froze in total anticipation for the shock. Because their brains were on that different wavelength, on that drug, you see. And when they weren't on the drug, and they put them in the box, they didn't remember. They didn't remember the mild shock. And I think that's really interesting, don't you guys? You know, when you think about how much you can't remember as a child, you're on a different wavelength. It's trauma. Trauma. You have these memories. You do. You just can't remember. Different wavelength. So we are on specific waves as we attach to our caretakers during this traumatic hyperarousal state. We compartmentalize these memories in that wave. Okay? So like I said before, we go through life not remembering, or maybe even unaffected, until we attach again, in our adult life, to someone, to a major relationship, someone we really care about. I don't mean a, you know, high school dating where you didn't really, you're kind of like, I don't know, I'm not that serious. You know, I'm talking at a time in your life where you meet somebody and you really start attaching to them. Okay? Now you might be on that similar wave because it's the one you were on when you first attached. Now you're attaching again. Now your brain's on that wave again. It starts unlocking these memories, and you may not remember so much the experience as you are going to feel the emotions attached to these experiences, and they're going to come up as you're attaching to someone again. Okay? Traumatic feelings attached to memories are horrible. They're horrible. Major, I always say major helplessness, hopelessness. That kind of trauma that you feel that and know that you can't escape. You can't do anything about it. Dissociate. that is why talk therapy is so important. It is so important. I try to take people back and I try to make them feel like that again. Because I can have someone, and you guys can do this, you can talk about a traumatic experience like this. Hey, yeah, this happened, you know, it won't do any good. You're not on that wave. You might remember, but you aren't feeling those emotions again. And the reason this is important to do is experiences. Trauma is too much for a child to process. They dissociate. They have tons of massive emotions attached to those memories. Okay? It's too much. Too much for a small infant to handle. And these feelings come up again when you attach again. It feels like too much. It feels like I'm helpless. It feels like I'm hopeless. You know, and that's a lot of times why we stay. We didn't learn what to do in danger. So I've talked about before how being neglected as a child, we neglect our feelings. We walk into danger. Now we stay. All these feelings come up. We can't do anything about it. We can't escape. I can't get better. I can't help myself. There's no hope. I'm in that fear cage again. I talked about escaping the fear cage. Childhood trauma is like being in a fear cage where you're trapped, you can't get out, and you're afraid of everything. If that's how you felt when you attached to your caretakers, guess how you're going to feel when you attach to somebody else in your adult life? Hopeless, helpless. It doesn't take much for an abuser to have a hold on you. It doesn't take much for one of them to walk out and not tell you where they're going. For you to stay there, dissociate, not take care of this danger. Because what I do talk about all the time is your emotional needs. And if you don't supply yourself with your own emotional needs, then you are sick. You know, just like if you don't supply yourself with your physical needs. We're sick. If I don't get enough sleep, I'm sick. If I don't get enough food, I'm sick. If you don't get enough love, you're sick. And if you don't take yourself out of danger, you're going to get hurt. And a lot of times we don't know what danger is if we can't feel it inside. So no more neglecting our own emotions. No more neglecting fear. Fear keeps us alive. Okay? If our body feels or senses danger, we can't ignore that. We can't. You meet your emotional need by removing yourself from the danger. That simple. And it feels good. And now you've done wonderful things for yourself. And it feels good to do it. And you keep on doing it. I hope you guys like this as much as I did. I thought it was really cool. I thought that study was really cool. I think that doctor is really neat. And I hope this helps you realize why you may not remember lots of memories. Because if you are dealing with trauma by dissociating and taking yourself out of there and then not remembering it, that's not good. It's hard to recall. You know, you still have those memories. They keep going. You still have and experience that trauma. It needs to be dealt with. I've said it before. It's an open chapter in your life and it stays open forever. If you go through trauma today and you just try to ignore it, not tell anybody, it'll bug you in 20 years. You may not remember very well, but it's there. It's there, okay? I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps, guys. Always, like any other video, go down below and ask me any questions you might have, okay? And always keep loving yourself. And if you could, please share this information with other people. Give it to people who need it so this information gets out there, okay? Thank you very much, guys. Take good care of yourself. Love yourself. Bye-bye.